Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of DTRH. It is December 15th, 2015. 12/15/15. Look at that. I remember when it was 12/12/12, just 3 short years ago, and everybody was freaking out. Oh my God, what do the numbers mean? Not that much. Stop putting that much power and energy into it. Anyway, welcome back for another live edition. Tonight, I am going to be getting into a few interesting topics. There's a huge methane leak out in California, which I actually literally just found out about maybe an hour and a half ago. Going to be hanging out with Joe Joseph later on tonight. He's going to be coming on. We're going to be talking earth changes. We're going to be getting into a bunch of stuff. But first and foremost, let me introduce my favorite co-host ever. She's back. We're going to be discussing all of this, and I'm going to be picking her brain about it. She's been itching to get back on air to speak to all of you about all the earth changes, bridges sagging. What? Oh, yeah. She's been paying attention to all of this, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever she's not on air, she's researching, as all of you should be doing. Anyway, without further ado, let me introduce my very special guest co-host this evening, the one, the only, Christina Consolo, a.k.a. Radchick. Christina, welcome back.
Thanks, Popeye. Good to be here.
So, you've been gnawing at the bit, so to speak, to talk about everything that we've seen. We've done a lot of road trips together. You and I have been spending a lot of time driving back and forth all over the country, and we've seen a lot of stuff in the past 6-7 months. We've been noticing a lot of cracks in the ground, especially in spots that you and I have driven past. We drive through, and then a month and a half later, we drive through that same spot again, and there's cracks and noticeable earth changes in spots that weren't there a month and a half before. So we're going to get into all that, but first I want to get into this crazy story out in California, this methane leak that you actually, kudos to you for bringing to my attention. You asked me, you said, did you know that there's a huge methane leak in California? And I was like, no. How bad is this thing from what you've seen in the past hour and a half? How bad is this?
I'm a little alarmed at what I'm seeing, and the reason I found out about this is because Aaron Brockovich is actually going to be going on KFI AM 640 on Thursday morning to talk about what's going on in the Canyon Hills area. And this is the place is called Aliso Canyon Park. And I know this area pretty well. It's right next to Palisades. Porter Ranch is one of the bigger subdivisions in the area. It's just a little bit north of Chatsworth. It's slightly east of Simi Valley. And it's in an area that we know is prone to earthquakes because it's like Northridge is right there. Ground zero for like a big earthquake in the LA area. So when I found out about this today, that she was going on the show, I started searching and I see that there's actually been flight restrictions placed over this area. It's a no-fly zone since December 11th because the FAA is actually worried about jet engines igniting from the increased amounts of methane in the air. And I thought, how much methane here are we talking about? Well, it turns out to be about 110,000 pounds per hour that are leaking out of the ground. And so, I brought up a couple of recent news stories. In fact, we're going to play some clips about this. This situation has actually been going on for 7 weeks, since the end of October. And it seems like it's been confined pretty much locally. The residents are freaking out about it because they've been smelling it and people are getting sick and they're getting bloody noses. And, what have you and I been dealing with mostly in the last couple months is Westlake, which is in St. Louis. Completely different problem. But again, we've got some stuff that was buried in the earth that, is now close to catching on fire, Manhattan Project nuclear waste. Now we've got this other methane leak going on right next to where the Rocketdyne facility is, that's had 3 meltdowns since the 60s, 2 of which people know about. They don't know about the third one. We know that because of a whistleblower who used to work there. But there's been 3 meltdowns in that area, and there's tons of cancer around there. There's retinoblastoma, which is like a really rare eye cancer in children that's rampant in this area. There's brain cancer. Aaron Brockovich has actually represented some of the families whose kids are sick with cancer in the area in Moore Park and Chatsworth. And I've done shows before with Loren Murray about Chatsworth. Michael Landon, Patrick Swayze, Vince Neil's kid, the little 4-year-old, died there with a rare stomach cancer. And, Swayze, I don't even remember what cancer he had. I think it was pancreatic. Landon had pancreatic too. They spent a lot of time in this area. In fact, I think Swayze actually grew up or lived there. And then they were shooting films there, and Little House on the Prairie was shot there. And pretty much anyone who's worked or lived in this area has been touched by just horrendous health defects. And so, now there's this methane leak, and it turns out there's this underground storage there of natural gas. There's a line. It's a pipe that's about, I think, 2,000 feet down, they said. It's over 1,000 feet. And what they're going to try to do, they've been, kind of dicking around with how to plug this leak and inject cement into the well. They've tried, 5 times to cap it, and they can't do it. So RSOE actually had something on here on their map today about it. And some of the quotes from the people who are working in this area, they've restricted it now just to daytime only work because they're worried about sparks or machinery setting off this methane cloud. They've brought in sophisticated, something similar to a FLIR imaging system, where they're actually visualizing the gas coming out of the ground, and it's huge, 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 huge. This cloud floating through this canyon is enormous. And, people live all over around this area, and they already shouldn't be there because of Simi Valley. And so, health officials, of course, now are showing up to these meetings because over the last 7 weeks, people are really getting worked up about it. Already, families have been relocated to, motels in the area. Some by the company, some have just done it on their own because the smell is so overwhelming. And the health officials are trying to reassure the people, it's okay, this isn't going to cause any immediate health effects, but maybe years down the road you might have some health effects. And, in the meantime, their kids are coming home from school and they have bloody noses since this is going on. They have the added contamination of what they're already being exposed to living in this area from the previous meltdowns. We know there's uranium in the water supply in LA. It's been there for years. This has been documented by Busby. It's been documented by multiple lawsuits, and part of it is from the Rocketdyne meltdowns. So you've got a synergistic effect or a multiplier, force multiplier between these different conditions going on. These people are now getting hit with methane. There could be hydrogen sulfide if this, we don't really know. We only know what this company is telling us. But you and I were together over Thanksgiving, and you probably remember the phone call I got from Donna Young in Utah. This seems like an unrelated issue, but you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. Donna Young, and you guys, if you've heard me on this show before talking about birth defects, there's been something that's been going on in Utah for a while now, for over a year, and a midwife named Donna Young started, blowing the whistle about stillbirths and miscarriages and birth defects that are happening in this community, and they're happening at a much higher rate than other areas of Utah. And so I got in contact with her. I saw an article about her in Newsweek or Time. She's been all over, interviewed in Rolling Stone and everything about this problem. She's had, all kinds of threats made to her life because the whole community there is heavily involved in fracking and oil and gas industry. And as people's livelihoods, so they don't like her making waves about this situation. And she's been trying to figure out what's happening, and we knew that there was a lot of radiation that landed there in the first couple weeks after Fukushima. In fact, Salt Lake City was one of the highest places in the United States. It had the same level of, I believe it was iodine, I'd have to go back and check, as Fukushima itself. Florida was super hot, Midwest was super hot, Salt Lake City was super hot. So we thought originally maybe it had something to do with the fallout. She said her kids had noticed that there were frogs with birth defects, extra legs and things in the ponds on their property. She had a number of cattle, about half of the babies in her herd that were stillborn. Her neighbor across the street that also owns more cattle than she does, about half of his newborns were stillborn or had birth defects. And this is all new, and there's like radioactive waste burning that's going on upwind of them in Clive, and then the Fukushima thing. But there's also a big, big fault there, the Wasatch Fault, that runs right through this area. And so, the first thing Donna did, she's a very intelligent woman. She completely understands how the force multiplier works. As soon as someone comes to her for prenatal care, and with the intention of having her, deliver their baby, she puts them on a strict diet, no gluten, only filtered water, only this, only that. And some of these women, they have had like miscarriages after taking baths, like they're filling their bathtub, staying in there because their back hurts or whatever because they're pregnant, and then they get out of the bathtub and they end up like going to the hospital and losing the baby. So it's like, holy crap, what is going on here? And this has happened multiple times. This isn't just like once or twice. This has happened like dozens of times in the last year. So she hired a toxicologist to start analyzing water and radon and everything that's in these women's houses, all these women that lost babies, all these women who lost babies. And she called me like 2 days before Thanksgiving. And at the time she had told me they were finding hydrogen sulfide levels were about 6 times higher than what they had tested out in the past. She had one house the week of Thanksgiving that tested in at like 60 times higher than what it tested at a year ago of hydrogen sulfide. So that's coming out of the ground. Why all of a sudden it's coming out of the ground in these massive quantities in this area? Could it have to do with fracking? I mean, unless you actually get in there and see the infrastructure and see what's going on, you can only do so much with Google Earth. You can actually do a lot with Google Earth, which we've been doing since we came back from this last road trip, looking at what's going on with the roads. So, we have some outgassing that appears to be happening, which is something that can occur commonly prior to large earthquakes. I don't know if this has to do with what's going on in the LA Northridge area, but this is already a hot spot for earthquake activity. And now this big gas field is venting huge amounts of methane to the point where people are having to be evacuated. People are suing. Lawyers are starting to speak for the people. And I mean, it's horrendous. And we'll listen to one of the clips and see what these people are dealing with at these meetings and kind of health effects. And we'll be tying this all in together, or trying to, during the show.
Agreed. And this is, wow. I'm just taken aback by this whole methane leak. I can't believe I didn't know about this. This has been going on for 7 weeks. I'm just, I know that maybe one of us could have missed it, but the fact that both of us didn't even know about it, that goes to show you that, I mean, they're keeping it, whoever's in control of this, what is it, Southern California Gas or whatever the hell it's called?
Southern California Gas Company, which is a subsidiary of Sempra Energy, and they are based in San Diego.
How are they keeping it this under wraps? I mean, how is there not like alternative media or activists in that area that are saying something about this?
I think they're probably in the process of evacuating their families. And that's why they haven't been going public, because they're too busy trying to take care of their own household. It's very significant what's happening there. In fact, Jillian Wright, who's the vice president for customer service with Southern California Gas, says that we have never had an escape this large. I have to really emphasize that this is an extremely rare event. The extent and the difficulty of resolving this leak are highly, highly unusual. All of the methods that the company has tried so far to kill the well have failed. And now experts who fought the Kuwaiti oil field fires have joined in the effort. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, this isn't something small. If you got the guys that were fighting the Kuwaiti oil field fires, like people like, well, Red Adair is dead, but maybe some of his crew, they might have called up some of the guys in his crew and whoever they've trained over the years. Red Adair was a legendary oil rig firefighter. But these guys, I mean, if they're calling in people that were fighting fires in Kuwait, they must be really concerned that A, this leak is not just an easy cappable problem, B, that it could ignite, and C, that even if it didn't ignite, it's going to have issues, health issues on the resulting people in that area, or else they wouldn't be calling in. They wouldn't be doing this. Just the fact, though, that it's been kept quiet for so long. It's kind of like when we found out about Westlake, that these people had been dealing with that for so long, years, and nobody knew.
They're very isolated from other activists in the country, and part of the reason is because their families are so sick already. And they're having to deal with that, so they don't have time to go on like Google and start reading papers and look for research. I mean, it's kind of by accident that they even found out what was going on at Westlake. Then you started seeing, fires pop up around the site and smoke coming out of the ground. Then it gets kind of hard to ignore. But when you have a no-fly zone established over a methane leak, I mean, this is very significant. And we've been following like engine fires and plane problems for a while now because of the Wigner effect.
Which I want to pick your brain about, by the way, a little bit later and have you explain that to the listeners. I'll play the audio clips if you want. I know you mentioned these. I'll play these really quick. These are the news reports that Christina was discussing. Now, these are two, one's like a CBS report, and I don't know, one of the other one is another mainstream report, but these are two separate mainstream reports about what's going on over in California with this, over at Porter Ranch with this huge methane leak. Again, 7 weeks, had no idea this was going on. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out.
Stinks in Porter Ranch, and residents are fighting mad about it.
Yeah, they say SoCal Gas has been polluting their town with a foul smell for weeks. CBS 2's Lori Perez tells us they fear something even worse than the stench.
The smell has been really strong, really pungent. It smells like rotten eggs.
Susan Gorman Chang's nose is telling her something is wrong in Porter Ranch.
Residents reporting like burning eyes, nausea, fatigue, shortness of breath.
Since October 23rd, Gorman Chang says her neighborhood has smelled bad and her family's been afraid of going outside, of simply breathing, ever since SoCal gas crews discovered a leak at one of the natural gas storage wells at its Aliso Canyon storage field. SoCal Gas spokesman Javier Mendoza says the well is in an isolated mountain area more than a mile away from the closest home. And what people are smelling is an additive they use to make the odorless gas detectable.
The odorant that we add to natural gas is put in such minute quantities that health officials have told us that there's no cause for concern.
But then yesterday, neighbors got this robocall from the gas company.
During operations today, an oily mist was released into the air. And in an abundance of caution, we're asking all of our neighbors in the Porter Ranch area to stay indoors until further notice.
I was shocked.
It was 3 hours before SoCal gave the all clear, but Mendoza says the warning was a precaution, that the oily mist was a mix of salty water, mud, and possibly residue from an old pipeline that came out as crews worked on the leak.
Right now, we don't see any reason for concern. We're having the liquid tested.
He'll have his work cut out convincing this crowd who met Saturday to share their concerns, especially as LA County considers a proposal for 12 oil wells near the SoCal gas storage field.
The community is really concerned about their health. They don't trust the facilities next door, and so we shouldn't be expanding right now.
So far, most of the air sample data is coming from SoCal Gas itself. So neighbors are now asking the Air Quality Management District to do independent testing. In Porter Ranch, Lori Perez, CBS 2 News.
Christina just told me while we were listening to the clip that people are afraid to even turn their ovens on. And I'm just going to point something out really quick, and then I'll go to the second one, and I'll get her thoughts on all this. But, if you listen, they said they released a warning, oily mist. But don't worry, it was just water and possible oily residue. But wait a minute. Why would you release a warning if it's only possible residue? Maybe you're downplaying it. So it's kind of like when they tell you the radiation from Fukushima is hitting the West Coast, but don't worry. It's all low levels and it won't hurt you, even though radiation's cumulative, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, let's get on to the second clip.
They say they're sick and tired of being sick. Now residents demand action over a gas leak. Welcome back to CBS 2 News at 5. I'm Paul Majors.
And I'm Pat Harvey. Angry Porter Ranch residents say a natural gas leak is making them sick.
Yeah, it hasn't been fixed in more than a month. As CBS 2's Dave Lopez shows us, they took their fight to county supervisors.
People are sick. Their kids are sick. They've been going through this for a month. People have been relocated.
Now I'm told it's going to be another 90 days. It's not okay.
Today, the people of Porter Ranch came to the Board of Supervisors, asking them, please, can't you do anything to alleviate what they call the horrible, noxious odor that they've endured for 31 days?
Stopping the leak quickly and safely is our company's top priority. We're deeply sorry for how the leak has affected the community.
But for the next 90 minutes, representatives from various agencies in the county, including Southern Cal Gas, explained that the leak has not been stopped because they haven't been able to locate it, and health risk, according to the health department, are minimal.
These exposures are not expected to lead to long-term or permanent health problems, but they are expected to recur daily as long as the odors remain.
It was explained to the supervisors that a steel pipe 8,500 feet into the ground is the source of the leak. The problem is they can't pinpoint it, and they could give the supervisors no estimate when they will.
We want to clarify that there are no mandatory relocations that are being ordered by the health officer.
The board was told that since Friday, at the company's expense, more than 100 families have been relocated from the affected area, and the offer applies to anyone else who wants to move from there until this can be resolved. But for the people who made the drive from Porter Ranch to downtown Los Angeles, that was of little consolation.
We're exactly where we were yesterday and a month ago.
And the smell getting any better or worse?
It's actually been getting worse.
So the frustration continues. No resolution from the Board of Supervisors because they have no power to do anything except to put pressure on the board that monitors the quality of air in Los Angeles, the AQMD, to issue daily fines on Southern California gas, fines of up to $75,000 a day. But so far, there's no indication that the Board of Supervisors will do that. From downtown Los Angeles, Dave Lopez.
So there's no health risk, ladies and gentlemen. We promise there's nothing wrong. There's nothing to worry about. I'm from your government, and I'm here to help you. I promise there's nothing wrong. Oh, and by the way, the EPA are the same people. Just remember, the government, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we're here for you. We're protecting you. Except on 9/11, when we told all the first responders and all the people that lived down by Ground Zero that it was okay to go back into the area and breathe that air. Yeah. You know, there was an entire high school that they didn't clean out and was filled with dust, and the entire senior class all got cancer. I think, if I remember correctly, it was leukemia. Yeah. So, I don't trust the government. Christina?
The officials are deeply sorry. Didn't you hear them say that? They're also deeply sorry for, like, all the kids that have, you know, appendix cancer in Westlake, and all the children that are full of lead from drinking tap water in Flint. And I mean, everything is just turning into like an environmental shit show right now. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. There's so many hot spots around the nation. There probably aren't even enough attorneys for the class action suits that need to happen here. This is the only way you are going to get any of this resolved. They don't even know where this leak is in this methane field. I wish Matt Simmons was still around.
You think it's a cracked pipe, or do you think the earth cracked?
I don't know. For the amount that's coming out of there, it looks like a leaking well. I mean, it's, you know, similar to what we saw happen at Assumption Parish when the sinkhole formed in Bayou Corn, and they had to evacuate everybody out of there because of the methane explosion potential. And, in fact, we have a great clip from Erin Brockovich that we can play about that, when she went in there and she said, "Get out." And that's what needs to happen here. That's what needs to happen in Westlake. We got to fix these problems, and the only way they're going to get fixed is if you start suing the companies that are responsible.
Agreed. Sue the pants off of everybody. I mean, everyone. Start bringing huge lawsuits. People need to hop in, and people really need to get out. I know it's easier said than done, but I've talked to people in Westlake about this. I've talked to people that were affected by Coldwater Creek. I've talked to people in other areas, and they've all said the same thing. It's much harder to actually do it than just say it, but in many cases they are, and I hope more people wake up and see what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, break sneaking up. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. 3 short minutes. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Christina and I have been discussing this ongoing, at least 7-week leak of methane out in California. It's crazy. I think she put it best when she summed it up as, right now there seems to be an environmental shit show going on. We have Earth changes, which we're going to discuss in a bit. We have perhaps weird space weather going on. We have things leaking out of the Earth like this methane. We have that's not because let's be clear. The methane's not leaking because the Earth is like, oh, it's time to off gas. No, the methane is leaking because man put it there. Man. We keep doing things, and these people that run these huge companies, it's like when BP dug the Macondo well out in the Gulf. They never have a cleanup plan. They never have and what happens when the crap hits the fan? What do? You ever notice that, Christina? They don't ever have a backup plan.
I mean, you need to hire a good attorney. I mean, and I hate attorneys, but there's just sometimes in life you need them, and you need them to advocate on your behalf when you find out that you're living in the middle of one of these places, because you're never going to get the money out of your house. You're never going to be able to sell your house. It could even be condemned with you living in it. And, I totally agree. And I've tried to put myself in the situation like the people in Westlake are in, and now these people in Porter Ranch. Imagine just waking up one day and like all of your neighbors are moving. And everybody's renting U-Hauls, and they're loading everything they can into the U-Hauls, and everybody's leaving at once. I mean, how horrendous to be just ripped up and moved from the place that you called home, because that home isn't livable anymore. And how long do you wait? Do you wait until your kid has a brain tumor before you take it seriously? We know what the synergistic effects are of radiation, of methane, of hydrogen sulfide, of, lead in the water, of benzene in the water. You can't mix those things. They're bad enough by themselves. But when you bring even just two of those things together, like benzene and radiation, the multiplier effect will make them tens, hundreds, thousands, or even millions of times worse when it comes to health. And it's worse if you're younger. If you're a child and your cells are still dividing, you're going to get hit harder with this.
Adults can handle exposure to radiation better than children, but it still affects the adult, correct? Because some people think that, well, I'm older, so the radiation won't affect me like it would a child. I've actually heard that argument. That's not accurate, right?
It's complicated. Like it has a lot to do with their immune system and what their previous exposure has been in the past. And you can even go online and calculate what your exposure risk is, and you can approximate how many x-rays you've had over your lifetime, or CAT scans. CAT scans are horrendous. Or how many times you've walked through a TSA scanner, or if you've had radioactive dye injected into you because you needed a thallium stress test on your heart, or you needed, thyroid treatment or something. You need to have like something done of your GI tract, and you had to drink some kind of dye. All of those things put you at a higher risk factor if you had any of those kind of medical tests. And then where you live and what your parents and grandparents were exposed to. So, I mean, as a general rule, yeah, kids are usually more affected. But if you're an adult with a very complicated medical history, you've had a back injury, you had a bad leg break, you've had a bunch of x-rays or imaging that's been done, or especially if you had any of those dye tests done, you're at a much higher risk. And if you fly a lot, or you've flown a lot in your lifetime, like as a child, I flew a lot back and forth to Europe right after bomb testing because my dad was working in Spain. So I had already a history of exposure as a child. And when Fukushima happened, my health got hit really hard, where I had been able to manage things until that time, and then things kind of got out of control, and I learned how all of this worked from following people who are health effects specialists when it comes to radiation, and luckily I have one of those in my family.
Radiation exposure is no joke. It's really not, and I've told you, I knew some. I knew a nanoparticle's worth of knowledge and information when it comes to radiation exposure and radiation in general. And over the past 6-7 months, you and I have had conversations about this over the years, but in the past 6 or 7 months, my education on the subject has been mind-blowing, to say the least. So I have to say thank you, and I know the listeners are appreciative of it, because that's how come I'm able to do the broadcasts. I didn't even realize, and I knew radiation was cumulative, but after like picking your brain and then chatting with Loren for hours off air and even on air, doing interviews and stuff with her, just the stuff that people don't know about radiation is amazing. The level of information that people don't know, everybody thinks it's safe, everybody thinks it's okay, it's not, and there's multiple different types of radiation too. And on that note, I want to bring in our other good friend, Joe, really quick. I just want to say hi, and then I'm going to go back to Christina. Joe,
hi.
Welcome to the broadcast.
Hey, buddy.
I know you're hanging patiently. I'm going to throw it back to Christina so she can comment on what I just said.
No, you go ahead. I'm going to have my cup of Americum because I'm American and I like radiation.
America coffee.
Ann Coulter says it's good for me, so I'm just going to go and have my cup of that while you guys go ahead.
Your cup of muddy America. Okay,
Please,
so Christina,
yes,
your thoughts on what I just said? And then Joe, I want you to talk about RF because you're a radio specialist, so that's another whole type of different radiation. But go ahead, Christina.
I know it's very difficult for people that live in these places to like take this seriously. You almost don't want to believe that it's happening. But you've got to look at what's happened in the past. These types of disasters, Love Canal, for instance, and women and mothers and grandmothers, they know when kids aren't thriving. They know when something's wrong. And you have to really trust your instincts. And, and the people, there's lots of communities that are dealing with these types of situations right now. And whether it's because companies have not, they don't have accountability, they don't have to take responsibility, they're protected by the federal government, they have sometimes caps on how much you can sue for or years that you can sue afterward. Like if a kid gets sick, you have a statute of limitations on things. Like you almost need to get like a law degree, and on top of the PhD that you need to figure this stuff out, or you look back at cases that have happened in the past and you see how the people resolved those cases, and it always involves attorneys suing in a class action. And I'm not trying to like blow people off when they email me and say, hey, I live in Westlake. Should I move? And I get that all the time for people, and I'm like, you need to get in on a lawsuit. Whoever is handling the class action lawsuits, get in on it, because if you don't need to move right now, you're probably going to have to in the future. You're probably not going to be able to sell your house, ever, with this going on. And if that fire ever hits that waste there, then we've got big, big, big problems for the entire eastern seaboard.
There's people that are currently, like, I would assume, buying houses in that area as of today, and I asked Dawn this, and when I talked to Kim, the lady from Coldwater Creek, they both said to me that there's people buying houses in there that don't know that that's even contaminated, or that the ground.
It's going to depend on their disclosure laws in their state or their city, and that can vary. I know in Michigan, you have to disclose those types of things to people buying the house, because if you don't and they buy the house, then you're on the hook for whatever it takes to fix the problem that you failed to inform them about. But there's communities that are so old, the pipes are so old, that there are no disclosure laws. It's called buyer beware. You buy it as is. You bring in your own experts or appraisers to look everything over and tell you, is there going to be a problem? But with this property, but a lot of times they're not looking at the dump upwind. They're not looking at the landfill that was put in 50 or 60 years ago. They're not looking at the methane storage underground. They're not looking at the history of the meltdowns in the area. They're not looking at any of that. They're just telling you if your property is okay. And most of the time they're not using radiation monitors unless it's a place that's known for radon. Like Wisconsin, Minnesota, they have very high radon levels there. So that's something that has to be disclosed and measured before anybody buys a house. So it varies from state to state. But yeah, there's a potential that people are buying houses in Westlake and they have no idea that this is going on in this neighborhood. And we have a clip to play from when people who lived in Bayou Corn experienced something similar in the recent past. In fact, it was 2013 that Erin Brockovich had to go to that city, and that was after I called her attorneys, the people that work for her. I said, do you know anything about this? And I talked for hours with their experts about it. They sent her down there. She went on the news and she told everybody, basically, get out.
I'm gonna play that clip because you dropped me the link to it. I want to play this really quick. I want to get Joe's take on all this. So here we go.
They're being told this is dangerous. Get out.
The sinkhole in Bayou Corn bringing out heavy waste.
Just what to do. There is absolutely risk and potential for explosion.
From environmental activists to lawyers.
Is all these chemicals now getting into the water supply? Is it getting into the bayou? We've caused an environmental problem, a disaster, and it should have been dealt with 7 months ago.
Good evening. Erin Brockovich is joining the fight to help residents in Bayou Corn. She told them she has their backs and wants to take Texas Brine to court as they continue struggling with daily life after that sinkhole formed. Now, it's a story you saw live at 6 o'clock on Just One Station, and News 2's Olivia Laborde reports from Assumption Parish.
I've never been accused of talking too softly.
Erin Brockovich's voice booms through this tightly packed room. The crowd seems anxious, unsure, looking for answers, and hope the world's famous environmentalists can help.
This is so awful. We don't know what to do. We don't know what's going on.
A little exciting that we got somebody that's interested in doing something about it.
They're being told this is dangerous. Get out. And they need to get out. That land, those homes, it's useless now.
They were forced out months ago under a mandatory evacuation order when a massive sinkhole was discovered just miles from their homes. Texas Brine is taking the blame and has been paying evacuees nearly $900 a week.
They've got a situation and they're trying to tell the community clearly, this is a mandatory evacuation. That means danger.
It all started when mysterious bubbles appeared in Bayou Corn a little over 7 months ago. Authorities say it was caused by methane gas and insist it isn't toxic.
There's serious gas pressure there. There is absolutely risk and potential for explosion. And I don't want to take that risk.
She became famous after Julia Roberts portrayed her in a film where Brockovich won nearly $300 million for residents in a California town who were exposed to tainted water. But folks around here say they're not impressed by all that. They're just hoping Brockovich can help them get what's rightfully theirs.
You know, I mean, looking at $100 million, whatever, that we're not like that. Wasn't raised like that or nothing. But they gotta understand, nobody gave it to us. You know, we paying for it. So it's pretty much to see how it goes, I guess.
Olivia Laborde, WBRZ Bell.
All right, so there you go. And Christina, you brought up a good point while the video was playing, that it's the same thing she is concerned about. The explosion, the potential for an explosion is exactly what is going on over in California right now.
Yeah, people can't turn their ovens on. Planes can't fly over. They can't work at night because they're worried about the machinery setting off this gas cloud. They got to get everybody out of there.
But it's okay. The government says it's okay. I promise it's okay to be there. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, the government is full of shit.
Quote, unquote.
Shiite.
Joe, thoughts?
Okay, so I totally agree. However, I like I told you during the break, Pop, I think somebody needs to be a hero there with the go to Radio Scrap. Well, you can't go to Radio Shack anymore. Damn. Go on Amazon, get yourself a drone, get yourself a blowtorch. Game over, done. Since nobody, I don't know how else people get the message when it comes to this stuff. If you look, there's been a long history of playing down the dangers of this, a very long history. I deal with it with, not a gamma radiation poisoning, but RF radiation poisoning all the time. Working with radios for years. My joints hurt. I've got arthritis in my fingers now. Anytime I use a radio that's like high powered and I'm close to the antenna, I can feel it. My joints ache. Because just over time, you break down. That resistance breaks down. Now imagine this, because for years and years and years, what have they said about cell phones? Oh, don't worry. Everything's fine. It's such a minute amount of power that it's not going to hurt you. Yeah, right. Look, I don't care how minuscule you think radiation is or what type of radiation it is, whether it be RF radiation, infrared, anything. It's cumulative. The damage is cumulative. So you may have a transmitter a quarter inch from your head or even less that only puts out, on the microwatts or even nanowatt scale. But over time, that radiation's cumulative, and you're basically burning a hole in your head, in your brain. Not so much your skull. You can take it. But there's going to be, at some point in time, a great awakening when they say, oh, well, about those there cell phones. Boy, they're bad for you. You shouldn't use them. Almost like cigarettes. For the longest time, they said, nothing, 9 out of 10 doctors choose Lucky for their brand. It's the safest, that kind of thing. There's nothing safe about it. Come on. But that's how they sell it. I gave you an article, Pops, about the early 1900s. That was a time when snake oil ran supreme. Of course, we have our own version then, or now, but in the early 1900s, there was a craze called radium water. And Popular Science back in 2004 did an article on it. It said, for that healthy glow, drink radiation. You wonder where Mann Coulter got her information? Well, it's interesting. And if you don't mind, Theodore Gray wrote, a century ago, radioactivity was new, exciting, and good for you, at least if you believe the people selling radium pendants for rheumatism, all-natural radon water for vigor, and uranium blankets for arthritis, and thorium-laced medicine for digestion. You don't even want to know about the radioactive suppositories. It's crazy, but guess what? There's a book out there that was published early in the 20th century called Living with Radiation, the First 100 Years. And that's what they talk about. All the great ways that all these people sold radiation as quack medicine. And these, these cures to your ailments and things. 100 years ago. Dude.
They had a thing in shoe stores, and I didn't know about this until my old gunnery sergeant Marine neighbor told me about this. He said, we were talking about radiation one day, and he goes, when I was a kid, we had these machines that you would stand on and you put your feet on, and they would x-ray your feet, and you could see the bones in your feet. You could look through it. And I forget what the hell they're called.
Dangerous.
Is that what they are?
I think it was called a fluoroscope.
Yeah, something like that.
Fluoroscope, yeah, right.
Shoe stores.
Yeah, why not, dude? I mean, come on. Think about this. Radon, right? Christina brought up radon. Radon has a half-life of 3.82 days. That's how nasty that crap is, Normally they say the longer the half-life, the less radioactive it is, as far as, like, hitting you with max dose.
Yeah, the decay is, like, if it decays
if it's got a very fast decay, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Right? Radon's half-life is 3.82 days. Dude, they were making water. They had something called the radium ore revigorator. And basically it was a water cooler that was lined with carnotite, and that's an ore of uranium and radium. So they lined it with that stuff, and then you stored the water in your refrigerator or ice box overnight. And when you came out, it's all, that water's just invigorating. And people bought this stuff to the point where there was a guy, playboy, if you will, in New York City. Byers was his name. And he was a big-time pusher of all these radioactive products, right? And so here he is. He's a 3-bottle-a-day guy. He's drinking it. Well, Byers had a gruesome death. He died in 1932. But the Wall Street Journal, which was one of the publications that exposed the quackery, had a headline and said, the radium water worked fine until his jaw came off. That was the headline.
Well, yeah, that's
how dangerous this crap is.
That's like saying, yeah, everything was going great until the house burned to the ground.
Exactly.
that whole house fire thing kind of ended everything. But before that, everything was going great, Joe.
Just like the apathy that we see today in the world in general. It's the same here with radiation, because oftentimes this stuff hits you a little bit over a long period of time. You don't realize the cumulative effects until it's too late, until the damage is done. you know?
Or the synergistic effects that you have from other contaminants in your environment. Or like you mentioned, like the biological effects of non-ionizing radiation.
Yeah.
You know, Wi-Fi and things like that. I mean, it causes cataracts. It causes like horrendous joint problems.
Yeah.
And in fact, I went to go grab this book when you first came on. And in order to really get the truth about a lot of this stuff, I mean, you can only find so much on the internet. Unless, you know, people are uploading it, it's like scanning and putting the stuff online themselves. But I like to go to like bookstores and look for like really old stuff. And I have a book that if and when I ever make it to Bohemian Grove, is that what it's called?
Yes, it is. It's Bohemian Grove.
I'm going to bring this book to you. It's from the New York Academy of Sciences.
Oh,
the Board of Governors approved the publication of this book in 1975, and it lists like every single biological effect.
Wow, I'm gonna have to get out my long Sherlock Holmes pipe and blow bubbles while I read that. That sounds like some really good reading right there. Holy smokes!
It is, but you know, like people who are curious about this, a lot of times when they find out something's going on, they don't even have time to go look for a book, let alone read it. Because they're too busy taking care of their sick family members. So what Popeye and I decided to do for the holiday, for the Westlake moms and the people in that area of St. Louis, we went with Jan Brooks, Miss Milky the Clown from YouTube, to a very old, it's like the second biggest bookstore in the world. I don't know. It's huge. It's called John King.
The most awesome
in
bookstore
Detroit.
in the world.
What?
And we got...
What's the name of it? Hold on. What? Did she say it's called John King?
Yeah, John King. I swear to God, Joe, it's called John
Get the
King.
hell out of here.
It's called John King Books. I couldn't.
Holy, and it's the second. Did you realize what an oxymoron that is?
I know. It's an old.
The John King bookstore?
I know.
He's going to be floored. I mean, he's got to learn how to read first, but after that, I mean.
Well, once you teach the redneck how to read, he'll be happy that there's and there's an entire occult section, so he'll move into it.
I can't wait to tell him. Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted, Christine.
Joe's one of Joe's oldest co-hosts. His name is John King. So he'll get a kick out of the fact that there's a John King bookstore, but it's an old glove factory, I think it was. It's in Detroit, and it's got to be the coolest bookstore I've ever been in. And the people that work there are just absolutely the most fabulous people on the planet. They really.
So is it like the Tower Records of bookstores?
Dude, you have no idea. They have books going back over, in some cases, like 100 years.
Oh, so they specialize in the hard to find stuff or the rare out of print.
Entire libraries collections. When libraries
Get outta
close,
here.
they just buy the entire library's collection.
So they scour the estate sales and things
These
like that.
people, if you need an old book, like when we specifically, when we knew we were going to be in Detroit, we purposely scheduled a day to go there and spend like 4 hours walking around this bookstore. And
how did you only spend 4 hours walking around that bookstore?
Because we got there like, yeah, go ahead, say it. Say it.
Because they were closing.
Oh, the son of a bitches.
there's
It needs to be open 24/7. What kind of, come on.
We would have been there if they were open.
I know you probably would have brought sleeping bags and everything else, maybe give each other facials and then read rare books all night.
Yeah, we would have been walking around with the what do they call it? The cucumbers on our eyes and the
Totally, dude. I would.
Yeah, I know you would have. We would have been exfoliating while learning. Dude, this place
Yes.
is magical. Like the amount of knowledge inside. And you can order stuff online, ladies and gentlemen, and they don't pay me at all, but I just love this bookstore. I mean, Christina will concur, right?
Oh yeah. I would go there once a week if I could. Every time I come back from Michigan, I need another bookcase. I mean, we've probably 15 books that we got just to send to the Westlake people about contamination issues and like waste management and landfills. And for their archive, they're trying to build an archive of information for people who need research material, like that they can actually hold in their hands, not just something they find online. But we're going to do a reading of the book called Not in My Backyard. That's a Community Action for Health and the Environment by Nicholas Freudenberg. We're going to do a reading of that over the holidays. And I'm not sure, probably just we'll put it up on YouTube, on my channel, on Popeye's channel. But for people that have time to like read, you know, they may have time to listen to a couple of shows, a couple of hours of me reading or Popeye reading. and then they can get the information they need about how they're going to fight this. But I can tell you right now, you're going to need good lawyers.
I agree. You need attorneys. You need people that are going to be willing to, fight this long term, which, by the way, also entails moving out of the area. We have about 50 seconds before the break sneaks up on us already. That fast. First hour just flew right by, but we got another hour. And Joe, I'll get your thoughts on the methane thing, and then that'll segue us into earth changes, because I want to pick Christina's brain about all the earth changes that we saw. And I know you're an earth change researcher yourself, Joe, so I know you'll be interested in throwing out what you know and what you've seen as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. 3 short, quick minutes, and we will be right back. I know, famous last words from horror movies. I'll be right back. Don't worry. I'll kick the horror guy's ass. It's a little different in my world. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to hour number 2 of tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye of FederalJack.com, PopeyeRadio.com, and of course, I have a huge YouTube archive section, DTRH, Radio Archives, Delta Tango, Romeo Hotel Radio Archives, over on YouTube. Go check it out, pass it around, subscribe to it. I try to put everything up there. There's probably about a good 15 or 18 shows I haven't gotten up, to be honest. I will get them up. You'll see them pop up randomly. It takes quite some time to do it, because I like to make sure everything is perfect. And
You're so much better than me, man. I got 331 shows I have to do.
I do all the editing myself. So you gave up doing it. You got behind like 100, and you were like,
what do I have? I have like Earthworm that actually like turn the wheel in my modem and give me my internet speed. It's not good.
So, yeah, you're not going to be uploading 2-hour-long shows anytime. It used to take you like 13 hours to upload them.
74 minutes to do a 2-hour show. 74 minutes, and that's like with the wind at my back.
with the wind at your back and a train pushing. Yeah, it takes me about 2 hours to render them, because I do them in HD, which, by the way, the first time, this is going to sound, I'm sure people have already been doing this, but I obtained one of those new Roku boxes because my old one finally died. So I got a new one. And it has YouTube on it now. I guess the old one, they couldn't have just added that. Thanks, Roku. But they have the new ones. You can use YouTube. And I actually went on and I actually got a chance to see how my videos look in HD. So to everybody out there that actually renders videos, just so you know, it actually is a good idea to render everything in HD, as Christina would say as well. Because
impossible.
People, with your computer, between your computer, if you tried to upload in HD, Joe, you'd start today.
Dude, isn't that like 2 gigs?
Depending on how big the file, on how long the file is and everything.
Forget it, man. Yeah, that'd be awful.
I only do 720. I don't do 1080. 720 is fine. It keeps it crisp. If you
I'll take your word for it.
1080 isn't. You only need to do that kind of stuff if you're doing like really high def type, video graphics, and you spend $100,000 to make a movie. I don't really think you need to do that for a YouTube video. Anyway. So I want to get your take on this crazy stuff that's going on in California, and then I want to shift gears into earth changes, because, as I said, I know you're an earth change researcher, and Christina and I have seen just an immense amount in the past 6 or 7 months. I mean, startling, to the point where even, how usually I'm like, relax, we'll figure out a solution to everything. I'm like, wow, that's a little unnerving that within like a month we'll be driving by the same spot. Traveling all over the country on these big interstates, and we've been past a couple of the same spots, and all of a sudden we start noticing more and more cracks in the ground that weren't there before. Like it almost looks like the ground heaved upward in some cases. So what's your take on what's going on with the methane leak out in Cali really quick, and then we'll get into earth changes.
It's hard, dude. I don't know. There's so many things that are going on with the earth. I've been kind of having like a oh wow moment. Not to get too off the topic, because I will get back to methane, but I think we really don't understand what it is that's going on with the world in general. I think these people out of arrogance, they think they know, and in reality they really don't. They don't understand the damage that's being done. What do you guys think about the fracking? Do you think the fracking contributes to all that? to the methane, unlocking all this stuff?
Well, it depends. Like what they're doing right now, the methane leaks they have out there is because they take old oil fields and they turn them into injection wells.
Yeah.
They use them to store this methane.
Right. They take all that crap and they kind of load it down into these wells.
Right. And then they pipe it out to the people when they need it during the winter in California. But the problem is you have a line cracked somewhere, or perhaps maybe if you think of the well as like a big shell, perhaps the shell is cracked somewhere. I don't know. I mean, this is in California, a very seismically active state. So there's that. I mean, perhaps these engineers should think about things like that before building these big wells.
But I thought the EPA looks out for us, Popeye. I mean, look at they save the speckled five-toed yak from extinction.
The EPA is on my shit sheet. Okay,
because Farmer Schmuckatelli up in Idaho can't catch water anymore off his roof, because that rainwater is pivotal for the speckled five-toed yak's survival. So
all I got to say, Joe, is I'll just say this when it comes to the EPA. September 11th, 2001. Okay, why don't you ask?
Oh God, not that.
Why did what's his name from the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, have to go and make a public spectacle on his show and go down and I'm glad that he did it, but he did it to draw attention and to shame these guys into passing reauthorizing the Zadroga bill, it's called, which is the funding of the health care for the sick and dying 9/11 first responders.
Yeah, it's sad.
Why are they sick and dying, Joe?
The air's safe to breathe.
Oh, because the EPA told them it was safe to breathe.
And it must be so if they say it is, Popeye. That's what I'm saying. Just like Wi-Fi and everything else, Popeye, it's perfectly safe. Go back to sleep. All right? Look, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I'm telling you right now, everything's okay. All right? You get a Budweiser in the fridge, pop it open. It's okay. I'm here for you.
Well,
and if you believe that, I've got some excellent swampland for sale.
Well,
by the way, it generates methane.
It's the same thing when it comes to them fixing our infrastructure, by the way.
Yeah, of course, dude.
Have you been on the road?
I don't want to talk about it.
Have you driven? Have you been on the roads lately?
Yeah, dude, it's horrible. I'll give you an example. Hampton Roads has always been kind of immune to a lot of the booms and bust cycles because there's so much military here that the economy really never takes a hit. Well, when this last economic downturn came along, the defense budget, it didn't really get cut. But for some reason, active duty military is seeing less and less of it. I don't know where it's going overseas, but it's not going to where it needs to go. Hence, there's less and less people in the military, less people putting money in the system. And now this area for the first time is feeling a pinch that they've really never felt, probably in 100 years. They used to pave the roads here literally every 3 years. There was always roads being paved at somewhere, somehow, some way. Shit's being torn up and repaved. I mean, I would drive down the road and be like, dude, I grew up in Massachusetts. They paved the road maybe once. They changed it from cobblestone to asphalt. And then that was it. And it's been that same asphalt since. And there's probably 5,000 patches per square foot on that asphalt. Because they don't do it. They don't pave the roads up there. They don't really take care of it. In Brooklyn, I used to drive a truck through Brooklyn, dude. They had Olympic-sized swimming pool potholes. I'm telling you, man, it was rough. I mean, you grew up in Jersey, so you know how that's like. But down here, it wasn't like that. Dude, now it's horrible. It's horrible.
Did you see the video of the truck in Pennsylvania? That supposedly people are like, oh, I wonder what happened. Why did this truck suddenly flip? What weird force suddenly flipped the truck? It was on the Daily Mail 4 or 5 days ago, and people were speculating, oh, could it have been wind? No, if you clearly watch the guy's video, because he had a dash cam, you can see he hits, he's going over a bridge, and you can see the road, and this is something that Christina and I noticed going north to south more than, she pointed this out, more than east to west. I'm going to let her get into this, but the road sags before a bridge. A lot of these older bridges, the roads are sagging down before and after where the bridge starts and ends. And you can see this guy goes over a bridge and the truck hits it. And you can see, like I said to her, the guy was going at a decent rate of speed. And he had the trailer was a dump trailer, like a full length dump trailer. And he was loaded with dirt. So, he's got a ton of weight in there.
Sure.
He's driving. If those back tires left the ground, even for a microsecond, Joe, it'll give it enough time, right? And then the tires come back down, and you actually hear it when you can hear the tires leave. If you listen to the video, you hear the tires go, and then the thing loses it. Yeah. And that's when he goes, oh shit, and the thing flips, and everybody's like, oh, what could it have been? And Christina actually pointed it out to me. She sent me the video, and she said, all she said to me was, what do you see when you watch this video? And the guy's driving along, and I'm watching, and all of a sudden I see the bridge, and I go, wow, that looks like a dip. And he hits it, and the truck just, rolls. So that's kind of scary. Being a retired driver myself, that's to the point where they need to do something about that road.
So you talk about earth changes, right? I think a lot of it, too, has to do with earth changes. Not so much that the fact that they don't pave the roads as often or whatever, but what I do notice is that the roads are buckling a lot more because of the increased radiation, because our magnetic field is weakening. The Earth's magnetic field's weakening. We get more of that radiation. It's absorbed in the asphalt, and then what happens? It heats up more. It buckles.
You think it's just that, or do you think the Earth is moving itself?
That too. Well, but why would it move? Maybe the Earth is expanding because it's absorbing more of that radiation, that cosmic radiation that's coming in, that's getting through because our shields are dropping, dude.
Are you talking about like space weather, Joe?
Space weather.
Okay, we're gonna get into that too, so don't worry.
It has to do with Earth changes.
Well, it's all kind of interconnected.
Cats are sleeping with dogs.
Yeah,
I know that because
dogs and cats are living together. It's the end.
Because the Dotson we rescued, Thor, his sleeping buddy's a cat. So it's happening. I'm sure the end is coming anytime, dude.
The end is coming.
Good Lord.
Space weather is actually directly connected, all kidding aside, right to Earth changes. Christina, what say you about Earth changes, the bridges, and all of that?
Well, we've been wanting to do this show for a while, ever since we went out to the Grand Canyon and back in the summertime.
Is that when you geeked out and went to the meteor?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
We saw a lot of weird stuff going on, like Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas, huge cracks in the ground where even some of these irrigation mechanisms, I don't know what they're called, those big irrigation things, they're on wheels and they go across the ground and they water. What?
Yeah, they're like a huge. It's like a huge like gantry arm with wheels and sprayer heads, and they're just they use them to irrigate the fields.
Yeah, but they're going across fields with huge cracks in them, and so as soon as we got back and I started like seeing what I could find online, people in Kansas and Oklahoma had been talking about this for years. This has been going on, and these machines keep getting stuck. Their wheels get stuck in the newly formed cracks, and they thought that it was probably due to overuse of the aquifer. I mean, I've heard all kinds of different explanations, and we know that that's a problem around big cities. It happened in Tokyo in the 1920s, which is why they don't drink out of their aquifers anymore, because the whole city started sinking. And now what we've noticed, though, yeah, you're looking at me like, what? Yeah, I'll tell you about that some other time. You can see like chimneys and sewer systems and everything actually started raising up because the cities were sinking, and this happened in Mexico City a number of years ago too, and they're saying we got to stop pulling out of the aquifer because the city is sinking because you have so many people using water. But anyway, what's going on between Michigan and Florida is different. The bridges all seem like they're raised higher than the road itself, and you can see that they've patched and repatched over and over and over again where the road meets the bridge, and that it's continually subsiding underneath there because they're coming out to repatch or the road is closed completely. And so we've gone like back and forth like 3 times in the last 4 months along that route, and this time was far worse than the other times. I mean, the other times it was noticeable, but this time it was like, holy crap, what is going on here? There were actually 2 bridges in Ohio, and I can tell you exactly which ones they were. One was in Piqua, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's south of Lima, north of Dayton, and then a bridge in Dayton as well. And you're still driving on the bridge, even though they're rebuilding like another bridge next to it. And the bridge that you're driving on is actually angled probably 2 degrees to the right. Like the whole bridge is falling, like shifting to the right. And then there's, you know, they're rerouting people all over. I mean, like half of Ohio is under construction, and they've had projects going on there for years. But this problem with the bridges is what this guy hit in the semi. And as soon as I saw that video, I mean, it reminded me of driving over all of these bridges, and I'm like, we've got to do a show on this. I mean, we cannot be the only people noticing this on I-75. And it's north and south, both directions, pretty much through Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And once you get south of the Rockies, you don't see that happening anymore. It's only in those states, and it's pretty much every bridge going north and south on 75 that this is happening to.
Isn't that the new Madrid zone too, right around there?
Well, the New Madrid zone, yes, is more central to Missouri, but Jack Reed, who was a retired USGS geologist, had put out. He's actually written a couple of papers on this, and if you search online Jack Reed's theory, you'll see some of this research come up where he had said from his study of fault lines in the Gulf of Mexico that the Gulf of Mexico fault lines actually extend all the way up through the New Madrid, and then they take kind of a hard right just below Michigan. They cut through Pennsylvania and then up and join with the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is also a big fault. And where those faults have always thought to not be connected, he said, no, they definitely are, and he gave all of his reasons why. And no one's ever really extrapolated upon that research. But if you watch earthquakes and where these like boom events happen, you know, where they'll be hearing booms for a period of weeks, and, you know, they come out and they say, oh, it's frost quakes, and it's, you know, people shooting at tannerite targets, and it's this and it's that, and, you know, we blew something up here at an Air Force base. But you have these people that are saying they're hearing booms, their houses are shaking, they're getting cracks in their foundation, and this has kind of been happening like over the last couple of years, ever since this sinkhole happened in Bayou Corn, pretty much all the way up through the St. Lawrence Seaway. We're seeing earthquakes that happen all along that. And when Popeye and I were together on this road trip, we actually heard or felt 3 different earthquakes in 3 different states in 1 week. One was in Michigan. We heard this huge rumble, and like 4 or 5 days later, just as we got to the Grand Canyon, they had an earthquake. It was like a 4.6 in Kalamazoo. And then in Oklahoma and in Kansas. And I even talked to some of the people that worked in the hotel in Oklahoma, and I said, you know, what's up with these earthquakes? You know, I felt one last night. I heard it first, and then you felt it afterward. So, I mean, in a period of a week, we just happened to hit like 3 hot spots like this. And, you know, with all the other stuff we've been following with, you know, what Donna Young's been telling me about the hydrogen sulfide, you know, and the other earthquakes that have happened, there's been a swarm near the Reelfoot Fault in Missouri. And within the last 10 days, they think they've had a series of like two, maybe 3-pointers, like pretty small. I think maybe the highest was like a 2.6. You know, we expect to see some movement, but anytime there's a swarm and then you have sinkholes happening, you have, you know, other things that people are noticing, and then so much infrastructure damage. I mean, I know about Wigner and how that could be affecting the infrastructure. I don't think that's what's going on here. It almost seems like it's more of an expanding Earth type thing that's happening. And anyone who's driven on 75 would have noticed this in those states. And it's really bad. This last time over Thanksgiving, it was really bad. Like at a point where you felt like the car was bottoming out when you drove over these.
Well, look at that video of the truck. And the truck hits it, loses it, and rolls. And like I said, I saw the video, and obviously you noticed it right away too when you saw it. That's why you sent it to me. But I saw the video, and you hear, it's almost like you can hear the tires. I challenge anybody to tell me that's not the tires you hear go really quick. You have to pay attention, know what squeaking tires sound like, but it sounds totally like the tires like he hit, and either his rear tires on the tractor itself or the tires on the trailer came up and then came back down. And it doesn't matter which set it was. I mean, it would have a little bit of a different effect depending on which set of tires, but it doesn't matter. That truck is still going forward, and all that dirt in the back of that trailer is still going forward. That's a heavy, heavy load. So again, you go watch the video. It's on the Daily Mail. Just go on Google and look up truck flips in Pennsylvania mysteriously, and you'll see the video, and it's the guy's dash cam, and you can clearly see he's driving along. He hits the bridge, and it's just like what Christina was talking about. You see the bridge goes, and in some cases, like you said, we were worried about the car bottoming out. I mean, in some cases, it was like a 2-3 foot noticeable drop, but between where the end of the bridge itself was and then the roadway connected back to it.
Yeah, because the potholes and sinkholes that are forming in these areas where the roadway meets the bridge, they just keep patching it. And we're driving over the asphalt, and you can see that there's another hole forming that's even bigger than the first part that they patched.
Well, you know how they think. We'll just put a little mud on that.
We can mud that.
We can mud that like that. There was one in Michigan too, outside of Detroit, in one of the suburbs outside of Detroit where we were driving through. You were like, oh my God, and you hadn't seen this in a while. And the last time you saw it, this hole was probably maybe the size of a softball, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a basketball at the most. And this thing was literally big enough we could have fit the car twice next to each other in it. And it would have fit easily in it. It would encompass the one lane, and it was starting to actually go into the second lane next to us. And you said, and you had noticed it. We had driven past it a few times, and you said that thing was getting bigger and bigger and bigger every time we drove past it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost, it looks like the earth is being pulled apart in these areas where the roadways are meeting the bridges. And if you go and you just search like bridges sinking, you'll see all kinds of stories. There was one in Indiana, near Lafayette, Indiana, that happened in August, where a bridge sunk like 9 inches overnight, and they had to close like 60 miles of highway because there was no way to like really reroute people nearby while they fix this problem. This is really widespread. Whatever is happening is really widespread.
Yeah.
And in particular in these states, in Tennessee, Kentucky, the Indiana from the news story, Ohio. Ohio was probably the worst. I'd have to say between Lima and Dayton, it was the worst.
I haven't seen roads look like that. And I know I haven't done major road trips. The past year I have, but I haven't done a major road trip probably in a couple of years. But like the last time I went on the roads were bad, but nothing like this. And just between when we went to Arizona and back, and when we've gone back and forth to Michigan and Florida, it's much different. And every time it gets worse and worse and worse. And I'm starting to notice more things. Joe, when you're driving through North Kakalaki over there, are you noticing anything? Are you noticing anything different, especially like the past 6-7 months?
No, nothing that I can quantify in the last 6 or 7 months. Like I said, just over the last couple of years, I've noticed that the roads buckle a lot faster. I don't know if it's because they changed the type of asphalt, but I've noticed that it just doesn't hold up over time like it used to. Like I said, dude, we grew up in the north where, hell, I mean, it was salt and salt trucks and plows and all that all the time. And they paved the roads, what, once every 10 years, 15 years, maybe, if you're lucky. And down here, you get a bad winter. It's just like, it's crap. I don't know. I can tell you, though, that, yeah, I noticed a change. I just don't know within the last 6 or 7 months. But, yeah, I'm sure if I was paying attention, probably,
I've wondered that, too, if they've changed, like, the composition that they use for the asphalt and concrete, too. And even the braces that they put in between, if those, like, if they're purposely doing it so that they have to repave it in a few years,
like planned
job
obsolescence.
security, like a planned obsolescence. I've wondered that too for other reasons, just in the areas that I'm familiar with, because of work that I see that now is already like having to be redone a short time after. But I don't think that's what's going on with
I don't either.
the bridges.
No, I don't either. I mean, some of these bridges that have built. Okay, so look at the Goethals Bridge, Popeye. I mean, you got to like drive in the troughs, because if I mean, it's like that. It's almost like you're a slot car on the Goethals.
No, the Goethals Bridge is, when you're a truck driver, is actually pretty intense.
It's intense because it's so narrow.
There's literally maybe 6 inches on either side of your truck between the side of the bridge. And when I say the side of the bridge, I mean the rails of the bridge and like the K rail in the center. So as you're driving over the bridge, it's literally the car next to you is less than with max 6 inches from you.
Yeah.
You cannot. And it's bumpy, so as you're going over it, and then the joists in the middle are all old and shot. Some of them are sticking up, so as you're hitting it, and there's potholes, so as you're driving over it, your tires are bouncing up, the truck's bouncing, and trucks that big want to sometimes bounce a little bit left or right. That's why you like to have a little bit of room next to you. Yeah, there is none going over that bridge, and I don't see that thing getting actively repaired. I haven't been in the city in 10 years, to be fair.
No, me neither. And
I haven't heard any stories of the bridge getting. We're going to rebuild the Goethals.
You'd think with the tolls, they could
Verrazano.
with the tolls, they could have freaking done it a million times over, I'm sure.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment, tonight's live edition of DTRH. Awesome broadcast, hanging out with Joe and Christina. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the news and a lot of distractions, but the stuff that we're talking about tonight is important. It's stuff that we all have to pay attention to. And there's one other aspect of it that we were discussing with Earth changes that I want to get into. Christina actually brought this up, and I'm sure Joe probably knows about this, the IBEX ribbon, I think it's called. But space weather. Christina, how connected do you think space weather is to Earth changes, earthquakes, some of the radiation levels, readings and stuff worldwide? What say you about all this?
I know that they're connected enough that we need to pay attention to them. And usually what I cover is nuclear issues. And in the last few months, we've had a couple instances of like things blowing up at nuclear plants around the U.S. In fact, on September 16th, we had, I believe it was 6 plants. One was in Canada, 5 were in the U.S. that were all shut down because of electrical problems. And the one at Fermi was the one that I was really paying attention to because they had a significant problem there. And I had called the NRC and I basically got, just lied to ad nauseum. I put the phone call up on YouTube, and you can check it out with their spokesperson, Victoria, the chick that doubles as a belly dancer, that one. Yeah, true story. It's all on YouTube. So, we had like one day where 6 plants went down, all with electrical problems, all pretty much like in the Midwest. I think one might have been in Arizona. Palo Verde might have had a problem around the same time. And now we've got, Indian Point's had a couple problems, another electrical problem last night, possible explosion there. I still haven't found out what exactly went down there. And I know if I call the NRC, they'll just lie to me anyway. So I'm trying to find out just from like people in the area what happened. But with the power outages and these electrical problems and, earth changes, and then if you pay any attention to space weather and auroras, you may have noticed in the last couple of months, northern lights are being seen all over the place. They were seeing them like every day in Michigan and Minnesota for a couple weeks back. Huge energetic events from the sun, and sometimes we have these auroras that happen, and there is no like forecast from space weather that they're going to occur. So this is like, energies that are coming from space that they're not expecting to see. And there's been like, some weird gamma ray bursts and other stuff. If you follow Suspicious Observers on YouTube, then you probably have an idea what I'm talking about. And within the last week, they have come out with news, and it was originally, I think, space.com that had written about the possibility of a cluster that they were measuring a light source coming from, that they thought there might be something orbiting a planet, and this was a few months back. And so they're using an array now that is in New Mexico or Arizona, where they have like 60 telescopes that are focused on this area, and what they found was a possible brown dwarf. And what they had always expected is that they would be able to see a brown dwarf if there was one there, if they used infrared imaging, and this isn't actually showing up on infrared. And a paper was written on it. I have the paper, a link to the paper on the Radioactive page on Facebook, and I'll put it out on Twitter again after this show for people who want to read it. This is being widely discussed, and in fact, the scientists and astronomers, they're not the first ones to bring this up. Obviously, people have been like talking about, possibility of Nibiru and things like that coming into our solar system, and it turns out that this possible brown dwarf is actually in our heliosphere.
Oh, geez.
I mean, that's how close this thing is, and whether or not, could this have some kind of gravitational effect on our plate tectonics? Is this causing some of the earth changes that we're seeing? Is it causing some of the temp changes, crazy weather, or is this other environmental problems? How much is coming from where, and then what are you going to do about it anyway?
You guys didn't tell Chris about the brown dwarf, did you? Please.
No, I didn't
Popeye,
tell him about Nibiru. I didn't.
Shh,
No.
Quiet.
No.
Don't do that.
There's been an energetic area of space called the ribbon, or they call it the fluffy cloud, an ibex ribbon, magnetic ribbon, a bunch of different names for it that they've known about for decades. That this was in existence, and they think we might be passing through some of the particles. So is that a possibility? Is something from outer space affecting what's happening here on Earth? I think that's a much bigger possibility than how many people are driving SUVs and things like that. Okay, but there's a guy. His name was Lance, and he had a YouTube account, and it's still up. It's called The United Knowledge. And he had been following these like booms that people had been hearing and plotting earthquakes over the last number of years. And it always seems to happen around the same time of the year. It starts around September. It goes through about April. All of a sudden we have fireballs all over the place, and we have like, these earthquakes, large earthquakes that are happening, or earthquakes in places that we wouldn't expect them to. And after tracking it for a number of years, he said, this has to be something coming from space in order to affect our planet the same time every year the way that it's been doing. And I did an interview with him in, I think, 2013, and he kind of dropped out of sight. He's still around. I talk to him once in a while, but he was like, I could only go so far with this without any money, like doing my own research, and like I have to work and do other things. So, my stuff is up there for people who want to look at it. And if you have any interest in how many of these things could be connected, I think he's done probably by far the best work on it out of anybody that I've seen that discusses Earth changes. And his YouTube channel is called The United Knowledge. And the interview I did with him, I think it was called Boom Doom. I think that's what I titled it, because it was all about the booms that were happening in Clintonville, Wisconsin at the time of Niagara escarpment, which have stopped since.
Joe, wow. Earth change thoughts?
Earth change.
Or space weather and
space weather, like I said, it's all I know is our magnetic shield's failing. So what we're letting in is not good. Everything seems to be cyclical. Everything appears to be cyclical, The other planets are heating up at the same time. Not like they're trying to pass it off as, oh, yes, it's carbon emissions, if you will. Yes, it's all that carbon. Man, bear, pig, and cow farts, you see. Now they're saying vegetarian diets are bad. So you have to, it's not good. Lettuce actually makes more global warming gases. I mean, it's absolute bull.
We're going to have to outlaw lettuce. We need a war on lettuce.
The problem is what are they not telling us? you know, because really you have to look at it that way. Look at Wi-Fi. What are they not telling us? You know, look at Fukushima. What are they not telling us? Look at the methane over in California. What are they not telling us? So that's the first thing you should always ask yourself. What are they not telling us?
You think some of the space weather, you think this ibex ribbon or space let's say radiation from space in general. Yeah. You think any of that has anything to do with if there is melting of the ice caps? Oh, more than just cow farts? Because I really don't think cow farts and SUVs and Aquanet hairspray.
Perhaps. I don't know where it is in relation to the planet. However, I will say that Antarctic ice is at an all-time high ever since they started measuring it. It's enormous. So whatever is happening is not affecting the South Pole as far as like melting ice. It's gaining ice at a rapid pace. So what's going on? You know, I don't understand it. You know, that's the thing is, like Christina said, there's only so much time in a day that you can spend researching this stuff.
Yeah,
because, you know,
I try to
9 to 5.
I try to find just the best people that I think are doing research in these areas and just try to follow their work and have an actual conversation with them, you know, like on the phone or on Skype, to kind of pick their brain a little bit and like just, you know, introduce my work and ask them about theirs. And then you have kind of a connection to some of this other stuff because these problems aren't going away anytime soon. And you brought up a very important point, and that was the changes that are being seen on other planets. You know, when you have changes that are going on and it's solar system wide, you know, what could possibly be causing that? And what aren't they telling us? We'll never know unless we can actually see it for ourselves. So all you can really do is monitor yourself on a day-to-day basis and your family members and say, well, you know, is everybody eating healthy? Are they getting enough sleep? You know, are they taking proper care of themselves health-wise? Because, you know, the stress alone from some of these things and following some of these things can be really detrimental. And I have to step back a lot lately because I'm too, like, saddened over it. And I don't really know what to do sometimes about these problems anymore.
I have a solution.
You just hate giving out, like, bad news all the time.
Yeah, I have a solution for you. And it's really one that I've seen employed very effectively over the past, 40 years or so. It's called, eugenics. So basically what you do is you just, you're going to have to harden the gene pool a little bit. And that means killing off millions of people that are genetically inferior in order to bring about a new and improved human being to be able to withstand the changes that are happening in the atmosphere and in the cosmos.
That's what they're doing.
Oh, is that right? Oh, shit.
I just want to know, like...
I thought I made that up.
I just want to know what they actually think. Like, because they can't honestly think that all the stuff that they're doing... And this is why I think Christina is right, and I think you're right, and I think other people that look into this are right, like suspicious observers and others, that there's more going on than just the elites doing things to the planet or allowing radiation to leak or trying to poison. I think there is that going on. There is oil spills. There is, methane gas leaks. There is human stupidity, arrogance, and greed at I can't even say the word unfathomable levels. Okay. But all that aside, I think that there's more to it. I think that this ibex ribbon, Christina, that you brought up to me a couple weeks ago, and I remember when we were kids, Joe, remember when we were kids, they talked about this, that there was like a ribbon of energy that was coming through space and eventually Earth was going to pass through it and then poof, gone. They never talked about it. And I remember this when I was in science class in like 5th or 6th grade. And you and I had this conversation and you brought it up to me and you said, what if this radiation is floating through the universe and it passes, Earth is going to pass through however big this ribbon is, however thick it is, whatever. She brought this up to me. Now, your thoughts on it, and then I want to get Christina's thoughts on the, the effect that the ribbon, but we could speculate if we have to. But I mean, how much of an effect on the planet, and not only the planet, but like the plants, the animals, and the people on the planet, do you think this thing has? Joe, first you.
Game changer, man. I really think we do. Okay, so remember earlier I was saying kind of my research has shifted. Of course, I'm heavy into biblical research and everything like that. Well, I ran across this book by George Pember called Earth's Earliest Age. It was written in 1876. And it goes into, so Christianity has a really hard time coming to grips with the fact that there was probably life before Adam and Eve. Just saying, there's a lot of evidence out there to support it. Okay, so with that said, what Pember does is he goes in and uses, he goes back as far as he can to the original Hebrew of the Bible and starts to look at the translations, and he's finding in the words. Now in Hebrew, a lot of the words have dual meaning, that it can mean one thing and it can also mean another, and sometimes they're very similar to one another. So the person translating it's got to kind of make a coin toss, and sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they don't. They don't get the context of it all right, and so that subtle one word change can mean a lot. And I'm only just starting this thing, and I'm just blown away because holy crap. I mean, what the Bible tells you when you start changing these words, it changes the whole meaning of these verses. And it talks about a pre-Adamite civilization that lived here before, and that creation as we know it actually was the result of the fact that the civilization that was here got destroyed and had to be restarted again, kickstarted. It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm just like, whoa. So I'm like diving into this thing, but could it really be cyclical? Could there be a cyclical event that, for lack of a better term, wipes out life and has to be kickstarted or restarted?
There could be. I don't know if it's that life ending. I mean, yeah, people's lives could end if there was earthquakes, volcanic activity, things like that, radiation exposure, but I don't know if it would be like civilization ending. But it is interesting because a lot of those the doom stories, all that they're very interesting. A lot of them, even the stories of like the Anunnaki and everything, and the stories of what is it? It's not the Enuma Elish. I can't remember the book, the Bhagavad Gita in India.
The Inagana Devita?
And it's like all their religious stories are in there, and modern day religion in India actually believes that there were aliens flying around, and they had space stuff. But anyway, they had there was a lot of these stories of apocalyptic destruction.
Yes.
And stuff. So I see where you're going.
So even with that said, let me just say one more thing, and then I'm going to throw it to Christina because this is awesome. With that said, in the Bible it said God made a promise that it would never be destroyed by water again, that it would be destroyed by fire. So even in the Bible, it talks about a future destruction taking place. So we know that eventually it's going to happen again. How it's going to happen again, fire, okay. How it manifests, I don't know. But with the magnetic field at its weakest that we've ever recorded it, and it's getting weaker by the year. One of the verses, I think one of the prophecies is that, men will develop sores and be scorched by searing heat in the end days. Okay. A lot of radiation out there, thinking that could create a lot of sores and things like that. I'm just saying that we're starting to see a lot of stuff manifest, but it's interesting because Pember's work really takes it back before what we consider to be the start of humanity. But there was something prior to that. Black Knight, satellite, the big megalithic structures, all that kind of stuff kind of tells us, it's screaming out to us, hey, Egyptology might not be what the hell they say it is. There's more to it, that kind of thing. Oh, it's unbelievable. But absolutely, the earth is changing. And whether or not it's for the good or for the bad, I'm thinking it's not for our benefit. It's for the worse. What do you think, Christina? Help me out.
You're just sending me down another rabbit hole with this. I'd love to look more into that. And what is that book called again?
I'll send it to you. I got the PDF. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, you don't have the PDF of the Bhagavad Gita.
Not the Bhagavad Gita, Anagata Devita.
No, that's what she's talking about. She wants to read the Bhagavad Gita.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, and you look into the Krishnas, of Krishna and how these cosmic battles. I mean, there's depictions of it. Unbelievable.
and using nukes. Christina, thoughts?
Yeah, there was a thought that possibly they had even like annihilated each other with nuclear weapons back then. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of that. I've certainly heard of those stories. I don't know much about the book or the theories about that time period or the evidence. I know Chris Busby actually interviewed on Ancient Aliens about this, though, because there's like a radioactive layer around the entire Earth that could have come from something like that, like massive nuclear detonations. But, you know, if they say the Earth's going to be destroyed by fire, well, I would probably cast my vote for nuclear fire.
Me too.
And probably Fukushima would have been at the top of my list, but there's also a lot of plants in the Ukraine that are having problems. You know, Chernobyl is still ongoing.
What if
we're building a new top to put over that? And then we have this whole Westlake landfill, the fire that's burning underground nearing the legacy waste from the Manhattan Project.
Christina, what would it take? What would it take, say a cataclysmic event, whether it be a ginormous EMP or something like that, knocks out power for a while, all the electronics, all the backup diesels and things like that. What if, just in the United States alone, all the nuclear plants just went into meltdown?
Well, the only chance you would really have of surviving something like that for any length of time would be moving like to the southern hemisphere, where I think they have 3 nuke plants compared to like the 480 some that they have in the northern hemisphere.
Oh boy.
But I mean, how much time would you really be buying yourself? When Fukushima happened, already 3 weeks afterward, they were detecting radiation in Australia. So, you know, you might escape it for the short term. But, you know, long term, you'd be faced with all these people that you know or family that couldn't move with you, you know, right, knowing what they're going through. So, you know, I mean, there isn't much that we could really do in that situation or in some of these day-to-day situations, except, you know, like we were having a discussion with a physician the other day who knew about Fukushima, and he asked me, what do we do? Like, what do I do? What do I tell my patients? And I said, tell them to treat themselves like they already have cancer and live their life that way. And I mean, even their interactions that they have with people and their own family on a daily basis. You know, we have a really, like, you know, sick society for a number of reasons. We don't know what they're not telling us, how bad things could get. But we do know that there should be some warning signs, and basically you can, you know, gauge the amount of exposure that your family may have received in the past or is receiving now by how their health is. You know, are they sleeping well? Are they eating well? Are they feeling okay? You know, vision fluctuations, you know, blood sugar anomalies. You know, there's all kinds of indications that a person may be affected by things that they're ingesting. Water is really the biggest thing because our bodies are made up of so much of it. You have to drink filtered water pretty much anywhere you live unless you're pulling out of a well, because your well is probably filtering the water for you by the groundwater seeping through clay, but that's not always right either. You have to have it tested for arsenic and things like that. So I mean, the burden is really on you to educate yourself, and how much time you want to devote to that is going to vary from individual to individual and from family to family. And a lot of it is there's going to be more of a sense of urgency if someone in the family is already sick, and especially if that person is experiencing symptoms on a daily basis. Then, you know, there's like big problems that need to be dealt with. And, you know, the problem is when these big problems happen with our health and we go to physicians, these physicians haven't even been trained properly in what radiation does to the body, because they're taught that it's a tool that can be utilized, and to a certain extent that's true, but also we need to eliminate it everywhere in our life that we can, knowing that the exposure is cumulative and that it's much worse, you know, has a much more profound effect on our DNA than what most people realize. And so, you know, the effect on kids is going to be a bigger deal than it is on older people. You know, if you live around Westlake and you're in your 80s, like, I wouldn't, you know, encourage you to move. If you've got, you know, a 2-year-old, then I would. I mean, and there's going to be a lot of different, you know, variables in that equation of whether you can even do that or not. And that's where the attorneys come in, because they're the only ones who are ever going to be able to negotiate any kind of settlement for you. And that is to cover your moving expenses, what you've lost in terms of your house value, your property value, and, how you put a number on losing somebody in your family, which, has already happened. There's already been a lot of kids that have died at Westlake from cancer.
We only have about 3 minutes left, but I want you to reiterate this. What is it again? It's the levels of acceptable radiation. Isn't it based off of an adult male, like a soldier?
A 25-year-old male soldier.
Oh, man.
A one-time exposure to a 25-year-old male soldier. Not when it's coming at you from different directions day after day after day after day, like it has since Fukushima happened. Where you're getting a little bit of it in the rain, and you're getting a little bit of it from what hit you in 2011, and then, we had some hot events over there in June 2011 and in 2012 and 2013 that were even worse than the initial event that we're just finding out about now. And, at that time, they had like some conventions that were going on for the Democrats and Republicans were testing all of the food, water, dairy, everything that they were feeding people at their conventions, they were testing for radiation. But they weren't telling the general public. This only came out after like a Freedom of Information Act request came through from the NRC that the politicians had been testing all of their food and water in 2011, but not testing the general public's, or if they were, they weren't sharing the results. So, you have to just kind of become a suspicious observer in your own right and look at what's going on in your surroundings. It's not, the potholes and the sinkholes and stuff like that isn't what my concern is. It's that eventually there's going to be some earth change that's going to affect a nuke plant or an area where nuclear material is being stored or being mined or whatever. There's pools, there's, plants that have been closed and there's still 30 or 40 years of waste on site, that it's going to affect one of those places and we're going to have a mass evacuation. And you have to know where you are in relation to all of these plants. And most of them in the U.S. are east of the Mississippi. So if we ever had a huge event where a couple of plants went down at the same time because, the New Madrid went off or something, you'd basically have to get west of the Mississippi for that. And that would only be, buying you some additional time in the event of like a multiple, nuclear meltdown scenario like Fukushima in a couple different places. And it could happen. It could happen at Indian Point.
I have to interrupt us because the end of the show is actually coming up on us. I wish I had enough power to let Christina talk. I know, it went so fast. Joe, thank you for hanging. Christina,
thank you. Good.
Thank you for being the most epic guest co-host I've ever had. And you can,